What we're going to learn today is a class based on a sicha, on a talk of the Rebbe that he delivered on the second day of Rosh HaShanah, 1976. This talk was delivered because the 6th of Tishrei, the sixth day of the month of Tishrei, is the Yortzeit, the anniversary of passing away of the mother of the Rebbe, who was called Hanna. So the Rebbe delivered a whole talk. Year after year, he used to talk about this issue. But in this particular case, the Rebbe delivered a whole talk about Hanna. And we will learn who this woman was, what's the connection to Rosh HaShanah, and of course, what's the lesson for us. That's the objective of today's class. We're not going to learn inside all the talk, even though I really recommend it. It's very interesting how the Rebbe goes back and forth and different ideas and the notes. Very profound, very deep. We're not going to do this today. You're going to have to learn whatever I teach you. But whatever, that's what you get. I really recommend to go to the source. I'm sure it can be found in English. I don't know exactly now where. There's a whole site called Sichos in English. An old site, but has a lot of profound information, direct translations of the talks of the Rebbe, and I'm sure you can find this also over there. Now, let's move on. Why do we learn about Hanna and what's the connection to Rosh HaShanah? So first of all, let's learn a few verses. This translation, I didn't do it myself. I just copied from Sefaria. This is found in the Book of Shmuel, Samuel, I think it's called in English, the first book of Shmuel and the first chapter. And I selected most of the verses of the chapter, but not all of them, but really are not important to our discussion right now. Who was this woman, Hanna? So there was a man, I'll read quickly. You can do it with yourself. There was a man called Elkanah. That was his name. Here's the Elkanah. There was a man called Elkanah. He had two wives. Wife number one was called Hanna, and the second wife was called Penina. Penina had children. Hanna didn't have children. And Penina was a tough woman because she used to make fun of Hanna because she didn't have children. You see, I have children, she doesn't have, and so on. So Hanna was like a sad person, a sad woman, no children. And they used to go, you can read the text over here. This is, again, it's just a translation of the Book of Shmuel. They used to go to Shiloh. In Shiloh was installed the Mishkan. The Tabernacle was over there before the construction of the first temple, just to place yourself in time, so to speak, and in space. Shiloh, it's a place that today would be somewhere in Yehuda and Shomron, somewhere in the east part of, to the east of Yerushalayim, and I said to the east, to the east of Yerushalayim, and the Mishkan, again, Tabernacle was over there working for around 400 years, 369 years, if I don't remember wrong, and we're talking about the end of this period. After basically this story, not this particular one, after the story of Shmuel, the whole life of Shmuel, who only lived 52 years, very young, but after the life of Shmuel, the whole Mishkan was destroyed. The whole tabernacle was destroyed, even if I'm not wrong, within the lifetime of Shmuel also, but whatever, there was no temple. Then Shmuel appointed the first king, Shaul, and then came the second king, David, and then came Shlomo Melech, who built the first temple. So we're talking about pretty much before the construction of the temple. Shmuel was born out of this story that we're learning. So again, Hanna was the mother of Shmuel, but right now we're in a period of time that Hanna didn't have children. Penina used to make fun of her, and they used to go every year. Elkanah was a very religious man. They used to go every year to Shiloh to offer offerings and so on. Some opinions do say that this story happened on Rosh HaShanah. That's what some opinions say, but all the opinions agree that Hanna was remembered by God on Rosh HaShanah. Like she had children, so to speak, she conceived, that's the word, on Rosh HaShanah. That's why we learn this particular piece of Torah in Rosh HaShanah. This is called Haftarah. Haftarah is a reading of prophets after the reading of Torah. So we learn about Hanna in the Haftarah, whatever. Okay, so let's move on. So again, year after year, they used to go to the Mishkan, and her husband Elkanah used to say to Hanna, Hanna, why are you crying? Why are you not eating? Like, come on, why are you so sad? I am better than 10 sons. Like, he was a good husband. That's the truth. He was a good man. But Hanna was very sad. She didn't have children. I'm sorry, this is too small, so I'll read it a little bit faster and read inside. After they had eaten and drunk at Shiloh, Hanna rose, and the priest Eli, this is what is called the Kohen Gadol, the high priest Eli, was sitting on the seat near the doorpost of the temple. The temple means the tabernacle. Some time ago, after this, Eli passed away. It's a whole long story. I recommend to read it. Very interesting. Now, in her wretchedness, she prayed to God, weeping all the while. She stood in front of the temple, the tabernacle, in front of Eli, who was sitting in the door of the temple. And Eli was looking at this woman. She was crying and crying and praying. And she made this vow. Oh God, if I have a child, I'll give it to you. It's just for you. Parenthesis, Shmuel only lived 2 years with his mother, and then he was left in the tabernacle with Eli, and he lived his whole life in the tabernacle. I mean, he went back and forth, but that was his place. He lived 52 years serving the Jewish people. A prophet, a huge prophet, important prophet, and so on. But Hanna fulfilled her vow. Her vow was, if you give me a child, it's not for me, I'll give it to you, she said to God. Okay. And, wow, this is too small. Okay, and she kept on praying before God. Eli watched her mouth. Eli was watching. In Hebrew it says, Shomer espia. He was like waiting and looking at her mouth. And she was moving her mouth, but no voice was heard. Now Hanna was praying in her heart. Only her lips moved. Like this, but her voice could not be heard. So Eli thought she was drunk. Another drunk woman, drunkard, comes over here, and she's like mocking this place. You're drunk. Get out of here. So Eli said to her, how long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself? Sober up. Come on. This is not the place to come when you're drunk. And Hanna replied, oh no, my lord. I'm a very unhappy woman. I really suffer. I have drunk no wine, no other strong drinks. Like, I'm really not drunk. Forget it. But I have been pouring out my heart to God. I'm praying. I'm really praying from the deepest place of my heart. In Hebrew it says, I poured my soul in front of God. That's what I'm doing. Do not take your maidservant, she continues speaking, for a worthless woman, like, again, drunkard and so on. I have only been speaking all of this time out of my great anguish and distress. When Eli heard this, he saw this is not a regular woman and so on. Then go in peace, Eli said. And may God of the God of Israel grant you whatever you ask. He didn't know what she was asking. May God give it to you. And so it happened. God gave a son to Hanna. The son was called Shmuel. And again, the story moves on. This is what we learn, we read at the synagogue every single Rosh HaShanah, in the first day of Rosh HaShanah, after learning the Torah, before blowing the shofar, which is one of the most important points of Rosh HaShanah, and so on. Now, the Rebbe places a few questions. I just brought a few ideas of the questions of the Rebbe. First of all, Eli was a holy man. He was the high priest. He was a holy man, really. So how can he make such a big mistake with Hanna? Like, he saw Hanna talking and praying, and he didn't hear what she was saying. But even if you find an explanation why Eli thought she was a drunkard and so on, why would the Torah talk so hardly about Hanna? Like, the Torah doesn't want to talk bad about any animals. And Hanna, she was really a holy woman also. So even if Eli really thought she was drunk and he had an explanation, why would the Torah register such a story? Yeah, I saw once a drunkard. Doesn't sound so nice. So we're not understanding what happened here between Eli and Hanna. Why did Eli make such a big mistake? That's one question. Another question, why did Eli wait until Hanna ended her prayer? Like, if she really was drunk Eli should have stepped out of his seat and just kick her out. Like, get out of here. I'm not going to finish. We learned, the verse says, Shomer Espia, he was waiting, looking at her mouth, and he was waiting for her to finish. And when she finished, he stepped up and said, hey, what are you doing here? You're drunk. Why? If she was really drunk, if he suspected she was drunk, why did he wait? Just kick her out. So we see something strange. Something is weird over here in this whole story of Hanna and Eli. And of course, this happened in Rosh HaShanah. I mentioned this before. And of course, it has to be some kind of lesson for us. That's why this story is recorded. Otherwise, we would just know that there was a guy called Shmuel. Her father was Elkanah, and her mother was Hanna, and so on. What do we care about this whole story? Eli thought she was drunk, and so on. Why? What's the lesson? Muy bien. Let's go. Let's move on. First of all, we have to understand what Rosh HaShanah means. Once we understand what Rosh HaShanah means, we're going to understand a little bit better the prayer of Hanna and what happened with Eli, what Eli thought. Now, Rosh HaShanah, it's a very special day, and it's a day of judgment for the whole humanity, Jews and non-Jews alike. And this is brought down in the Talmud. That means common knowledge for everybody. Nobody can argue this. And the Rebbe mentions this in his talks, and the Zohar talks about this. Like, it's common knowledge. The whole creation is judged in Rosh HaShanah. What is the judgment about? The judgment is about what's going to be your next year, so to speak, in material things, regarding material things, and regarding spiritual things. In other words, how much are you going to feel God next year? And what's the judgment based on? Whatever you did last year, all your deeds and your non-deeds, what you didn't do last year, and of course, how you pray in Rosh HaShanah, how you live this particular Rosh HaShanah, and that's going to be the judgment, and that's going to be the verdict for the whole rest of the year. Again, how much, in short words, money you're going to have this year, how much health you're going to have this year, and how much godliness you're going to feel this year. Okay, that's Rosh HaShanah. Together with this, it's a moment, going a little bit deeper, it's a moment of accepting God as King. Our sages explain this in Hasidic thought a lot, that Rosh HaShanah is a moment when God, so to speak, removes his kingship from the world. He ends, so to speak, a contract, a 1-year contract that he did with the world, and he is expecting whether we as human beings are going to arise in him the will of being king for 1 more year. If we do the right things and we do etc., blow the shofar, whatever we have to do in Rosh HaShanah, so God decides to be king 1 more year. And he involves with us and so on. Otherwise, no. Which means, what I wrote over here, we don't feel godliness. The world probably is going to exist because maybe at some point in the world, some crazy tzaddik in Yerushalayim is going to blow the shofar, and he's going to do whatever has to be done for God to be king. So he's going to be the king. But since each individual, probably maybe didn't do whatever has to do, whatever is expected of you, so he's not going to be your king. So you're not going to feel it. That's what it means, Rosh HaShanah. So it's a very special moment after crowning God as a king in Rosh HaShanah, which the whole prayers of Rosh HaShanah go around this concept, HaMelech, the king, and so on. After that, we have to accept his commandments. Because we accepted him as a king, so we accept his commandments. The other way, it doesn't work. The other way around, it doesn't work. You can't accept the commandments, but not God as a king. Why? Because if some of the commandments you don't like, you don't enjoy, you don't understand, you're going to say, I'm not going to do this one. Why not? Because God is not my king. I just accepted this commandment because I like it. Or because I understand it. So, first of all comes the acceptance of God as a king. Whatever he says, I'll do it. And then, tell me what you want me to do, or want me not to do, and so on. Now, in this particular day, again, day of judgment, is a very solemn day of crying of the king, and so on. If you read the the prayers of Rosh HaShanah, and if you talk to anyone that prays in Rosh HaShanah and so on, Rosh HaShanah is a moment for asking whatever you need. Ask from God for a good year, and we ask constantly around the prayers, give us a good year, give us health, give us money, give us whatever you need, children, whatever. And Hanna was praying for a child, actually. This is what she wanted. Okay, she made a promise, I'm going to give this child to God, and we're going to talk about this later, but in a practical sense, she was asking for something for herself. So the question is, in such a special day, how do you ask things for yourself? Like, you should be completely nullified and given over to God, absolutely given over to God, and not thinking about yourself, just think about God. That's basically the question that the Rebbe poses and tries to explain for us to understand what was Eli thinking. Eli was thinking, wait a second, you're standing in front of God. And you are praying to God in a very special day. Again, some opinions say this happened in Rosh HaShanah. And you're asking for things for yourself? You want a child? Eli said to Hanna, basically, you're drunk of yourself. You just think about yourself. That's your problem. And not because you drank wine, whatever. You drank too much of yourself. You just look at yourself. You're egoistic. And you think about your needs. But what about God? Did you think about God? Yeah, you're praying to God because He's the only one who can give you whatever you need. What are you going to pray to me? I can't give you anything. Maybe a class, whatever. But don't pray to me. So you pray to God. But you shouldn't be thinking about your needs in a moment that has to be around God. He is the King. He's the day of judgment and so on. And this is what I wrote over here, but this is the same problem, so to speak, we have every single day when praying. The prayer, tefillah, what comes from the word teufel. Teufel means to join together two things. So tefillah, prayer, is a moment of connection. You should be connecting yourself to God. At your level, at your pace, at your words, whatever, but it's a moment of connection. So in that moment of connection, why do you think about yourself? I need money. I need health. I need happiness. I need children. I need whatever you want to need. Whatever you need. Why do you think about yourself in a moment that you should be only thinking about God? To the point that our sages do say that the moment of prayer, the most holy moment of prayer, whatever, there are certain steps to prayer that it doesn't really matter right now, all the steps, but that moment should be a moment in which you give yourself completely to God. So why do you think about yourself? Again, same question over and over, not just the tefillah of Rosh HaShanah, not just the prayers of Rosh HaShanah, but the prayer of every single day. And we do ask all kinds of things, and it's okay. And our sages tell us to ask. So we have to understand this. Why do we ask things from God in a moment that we should only be thinking about God and not ourselves? Now, the Rebbe says that the prayer of every single day during the year, we could understand. I'll explain how. But particularly the prayers of Rosh HaShanah, it's completely not understood. Why do we ask things for ourselves and forget about God? Why would the prayers of every single day of the year not have this problem, quote unquote, of thinking about ourselves while in front of God and so on? Because we already accepted God as a king in Rosh HaShanah, in the previous Rosh HaShanah. So after having accepted God, we already got this, we already passed, so to speak, this stage, and now we ask things from God. Why? During every single day. Why? During prayer. Because God, during the year, is like a king taking care of his country, of his people. So he has to go to the people and ask them, what do you need? And this guy says, I need money. So the king has to arrange whatever he has to arrange to give this guy money. And the other one needs health, so you have to arrange a doctor. And the other one is, and so on. So there's a moment, so to speak, not necessarily in time, there's a situation in which the king is with the people, taking care of the people, listening to the needs of the people, because he's already the king and they accepted him already in the previous Rosh HaShanah, so to speak. So, okay, we get it. Now is the time to ask, when you're in front of the king, in the middle of prayer. So, okay, that's fine. You feel you need something. Who are you going to ask to? The king. That's fine. We got it. That's during the year. But Rosh HaShanah, wait a second. God, so to speak, said, I don't want to be the king anymore. That's it. I gave you 1 year. You did all kinds of etc. Each person knows himself, herself, and so on. You didn't behave so nice and so on and so on. So I'm not going to be the king anymore. At that time, when we're praying, that's what Rosh HaShanah is all about. Crowning again and asking him to be the king and so on. We're going to behave. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. In that moment, it's not a moment to ask. How do you feel your own needs? How do you feel your own metzius, we say in Hebrew, your own existence? You should only be thinking about God. So this, so to speak, finishes the question, trying to understand what happened with Eli and Hanna. Eli was thinking about Hanna, a woman that only thinks about herself. In the most holy time, in the most holy place, in front of God in the Mishkan, in the Tabernacle, you only think about what you want. Now, this is basically the same thing that I just said. But I'm going to try to explain what the Rebbe, how the Rebbe answers this idea. And the Rebbe explains something very interesting. What's the mission of a human being in the world? Why are we here? So God created the world in such a way that He is hidden within the world, and He wants us, He's expecting us, each one of us, to work on ourselves, to refine ourselves, and to work with the world in order to reveal His presence. In the words of the Midrash, of our sages, God wanted to have a dwelling place in this low world, in this physical world. But it's not just something He wants, and that's it. Because He can do whatever He wants. He doesn't need us to do this and so on. Rather, He created us, and He gave us a mission of accomplishing that which He wants, a dwelling place and so on. How do you do that? By behaving as the Torah expects from you, because the Torah, after all, is the will of God. By behaving, keeping, observing, whatever, what the Torah says, so you make of yourself and the world around you a dwelling place for God. And there are, so to speak, sparks of godliness all around the world. Everything that you see around you is God and has a spark of godliness waiting for you to use it and redeem it, so to speak, in a holy way. The food you eat, make a bracha, make a blessing before you eat, and the things, material things you use, and so on. Every single thing in the world is expecting you, particularly. That means every person in every single place of the world has contact with different things. I live in Argentina, so I have contact with things in Argentina. So a person living in, Europe has contact with things in Europe. Those sparks of godliness in Europe, I can assure you, at least right now, they're not my mission, because I'm not there. And probably, I don't know if I'm going to be there. It doesn't really matter right now. But right now, I'm not there. I can assure you that. So that's not my mission. No problem. But I have my mission wherever I live, with the people I have contact with, and so on. So that part of the world, in this case, in my particular case, Argentina, clearly is expecting me to refine it and to use it and so on. So why do we ask in prayer, particularly in Rosh HaShanah, which is a general day, but this applies to every single day? Why do we ask in prayer? For us, I want money, I want health, I want this and that. No. You're asking God to present to you whatever sparks of godliness you have to refine. In other words, we're asking God that He gives us the tools to fulfill His mission. That's the asking. We're not asking for ourselves. What do you mean? If you're in front of God, you're praying to God, you think about yourself? No. When you're in front of the king, you just think about the king. To the point that our sages bring a very interesting idea. Sounds pretty harsh, but it's an interesting idea. In Aramaic, in the Talmud, Aramaic is like a play of words. A person that makes a sign, blinks an eye or makes a sign with a finger in front of the king is liable for death penalty. You're dead. The question is, wait a second, it's too much. You just move the finger and you're dead? Why? The answer is very simple. In front of the king, you don't move unless the king gives you permission. Unless the king asks you to, whatever, move and do something. So if you, by yourself, decided to move and to do something in front of the king, that's it. That's a rebellion against the king. You're rebelling yourself. The king didn't give you permission. The king didn't ask you to do that. So every single move, every single breath, and so on, it sounds like a song, whatever. That should be focused towards serving God. And that's why we ask again. If I don't have money to buy food, so how can I serve God and refine the food? How can I serve God and have a healthy body and so on to serve Him more and learn more and so on? So I need money to buy food. And so every single thing we ask, the objective, the target is service to God. That's why we ask. Okay, let's move on. The Rebbe says, interestingly, that sounds very interesting for tzaddikim, for very holy people that really realize that their mission is to serve God in every single second, in every single place, and so on. But regular people, like us, let's suppose, we ask because we need. What do you mean, God? We need. I need. I want. Even if I don't need, I want. So we ask. So how can we say that the whole prayers of Rosh HaShanah, such a holy day and special day, and this again applies to the prayers of every single year, every single day of the year, even though we can find a difference between the prayers of every single day and Rosh HaShanah, as we explained, in every single day, God is already a king. Rosh HaShanah, you're crowning Him as a king. Okay, but how can we say that this applies to every single person in the world? The Rebbe explains with a teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement, and he brings a very interesting idea about this verse. In Psalm 107, the verse says, hungry, thirsty, their soul would vanish. That's what the verse says. And the Baal Shem Tov says something very interesting. When a person is hungry, when a person is thirsty, don't think it's just because the body wants to eat or the body wants to drink. No, there's something more happening over there. There's something spiritual. The soul is wanting to refine whatever the mission of that soul is. As I explained before, every single one of us has a mission, and we have to refine ourselves and the world around us and so on. So when we want to eat, it's not just like an animal thing. Animals also want to eat. So what are you, some kind of animal? Human beings are not better animals. No way, at least from the Torah perspective, human beings are not animals. Are human beings. It's a different, completely infinite, differently world domain. Human beings. Animals and animals. Human beings are not are human beings. So when the person wants to eat, it's not just an animalistic idea. It's rather a very profound will of the soul, for so to speak, wanting to really refine the world. In that case, even us, which are simple people, so to speak, when we ask, even if we don't really completely, deeply feel, as I explained before, that we want to do our mission, fulfill our mission, and we want to refine the world around us. Even if we don't feel this is the truth anyway. This is what is happening inside of us. Parenthesis, the Rebbe doesn't touch this, but I think it's important to mention it at least. Of course, many times happens that we want to eat, even if it's not for refining the world. We just want to eat. Like you have your belly is full of food already, and you see something nice and say, I want to eat this. You don't really need it. Okay, so then you have to really find an equilibrium, I don't know how to say this. You have to find what's really necessary for you and what's what you want. That's a different story, so to speak, a different class. But the point is, closing parenthesis, that every time a person really he wants to be in touch with something and feels some kind of attraction to something, of course, in the good sense. I'm not talking about bad ideas. That's a yetzer hara, that's a bad inclination. Even inclination, forget it. I'm just talking about a normal and good behavior. That means that the soul is really wanting to get in touch with that, really wanting to refine that, because the mission of the person goes around that thing. And if a person doesn't do it, you're lost. You lost the reason why you were created. And I don't know if there's going to be another opportunity to actually refine that and so on. Okay. Having said that, so we explained. I'm going back on purpose. Why do we ask on prayer every day, in Rosh HaShanah in particular? Because we have a mission. And we're asking God to help us fulfill our mission. And this not only applies to holy people, it applies to every single person, because there's something, even if we're not conscious of that, there's something very deep inside of us that wants to fulfill the mission. And of course, there's a yetzer hara, there's an even inclination, trying to complicate the life to us, so we do not fulfill the mission. But that's a different story also. So let's move on. We had some questions. Let's see what the answers are. We explained that Eli was watching this woman, Hanna, praying and so on, and he thought she was drunk. Now, again, what were the questions? Being in front of God, in front of Hashem, how can you think about yourself? How can you be so selfish, so to speak? Moreover, if you look at the verses, she says, she prayed a lot, really with a lot of soul, so to speak. And Eli was very angry at this. You're really so much into yourself. You're so much into your needs in such a holy place, in such a holy moment, at least according to the opinion that this happened in Rosh HaShanah. You're drunk of yourself. You forgot about God. And that's why he waited for her to finish her prayer. Because after all, it was a prayer. It wasn't a really alcohol drunk woman. If Hanna would have been really, really drunk of alcohol and so on, so Eli, of course, would have kicked her out very fast from that place. You're not supposed to be here, go somewhere else. But that wasn't the case. Eli saw a woman that she only thinks about herself. But she was praying to God. Okay. So the problem was the content, so to speak, of the prayer, the way she was praying. That's why he waited. And Hanna, what did Hanna tell Eli? No, my master, you got me wrong. I've been pouring out my heart, my soul. The verse actually says my soul to God. I'm really connecting my essence to God. Forget it. I'm not thinking about myself. The reason I'm asking a child, this is what Hanna told Eli, and Eli actually didn't know at the moment it was a child. Afterwards, I didn't bring all the verses. Afterwards, 2 years later, Hanna came back and told Eli, this is the child I was praying about. And she left the child over there, as I explained before. But the point is that Hanna answered Eli, I'm praying not for myself. I'm praying to fulfill my mission. I'm praying, I'm connecting my soul, the essence of my soul, to my Creator, to God. I'm pouring my soul to God. I'm not drunk of myself. I'm just expressing the deepest feelings of my soul. I want to serve God. I don't know, and the Rebbe doesn't touch this idea, I don't know how Hanna knew that her service to God was about a child. I don't know that. For some reason, she knew it. I don't know. But the point is that this was something true, something that came from the deepest place of the soul of Hanna. And that's why afterwards, like the end of the story, so to speak, afterwards, she offered her child to God. And she did it like in in the prayer, she promised this, and then she kept the promise. And she gave the child, and there are stories how Eli raised Shmuel. I don't know if Hanna ever saw Shmuel again. I don't know. That information I don't have. Maybe there's some midrash somewhere, but I don't know that. The point is that she kept her word. So we see that even when asking for a child, that for some reason Hanna knew this was her mission. That's why she was asking for a child in such a special moment, in such a special place. Even so, she offered the child to God. Like, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for you. This child is going to be something for you. He's going to be your prophet, and he's going to be like a great personality in Jewish history, Shmuel. Probably Hanna didn't know that, but certainly she did say, I will give this child to you. It's for you, it's not for me. Now, what's the lesson of all of this for us? So I'm going to read from inside because it's very interesting how the Rebbe explains this lesson. Okay, I'll start from the, so to speak, the beginning, and then I'll give the lesson. It's just two paragraphs, so to speak. I think it's worth. So now, this is the reason, says the Rebbe, in our service to God, how to see this in service to God, that our sages told us to learn, to read this particular text of Hanna. Let's go like this. This particular text of Hanna in the day of Rosh HaShanah, together with the words of Eli. Because we could have only read just what Hanna said, and that's it. Very nice. Hanna's story, the son, Shmuel. Why do we talk so bad, quote unquote, about Eli? Poor Eli. What's his fault? So the Rebbe explains like this. The declaration of Eli was that when you're in front of God, in front of the Holy of Holies, it's not important at all anything except for God. You should not be thinking about anything else but God. That's what Eli was thinking. That was his frame of mind. Don't come to here to ask for things. What do you mean ask for things? Just God. I want to connect to God. There's no room for anything else, no petitions, no asking anything physical or even things that are spiritual. Forget it. Not even asking for children. And for sure not in a way that you're praying too much, like a lot. No way. You're wrong. This is what Eli was thinking. This is being drunk of your own things, of your own needs, of your own wills. You're drunk of yourself, basically. So it's completely inappropriate to do in front of God. This is what Eli thought. And of this, Hanna answered, no, I'm pouring my soul, in front of God. Not only my prayer for children is not drunk, I'm not drunk of that, and it's not my will, nor on the contrary, completely on the contrary. This is an expression of the deepest of my soul. Like the Baal Shem Tov taught, that when the person wants to eat, it's because the soul wants to eat and so on. I'm expressing my soul. I'm so given to God that my soul is connecting to God, and my soul is saying, you have to have a child. You need a child. So, when am I going to do this? When am I going to express the deepest feeling of my soul? In front of God. In front of in the holiest place, in the holiest moment. That's when my soul comes up and says, you need this, you need a child, you need a son. As we do say in Psalm 27, that we have to ask for the countenance of God, the face, so to speak, of God. And who is asking for the face of God? The face, so to speak, the most innermost part of the soul of the person. That's why we see and we understand that immediately when Hanna ended, so to speak, asking for a child, she said, I'm sorry, and I'm going to give this child all the days of his life to God. He's going to be completely dedicated to God. And if you look at the Book of Shmuel, which is a very interesting book to read, at the end of the life of Shmuel, he actually has a whole argument with the Jewish people. And he says, look, I dedicated my 52 years to you. I have nothing for me. I didn't even take a donkey for me of your possessions. Forget it. I have nothing. My life is just for you. And actually, the Psalms compare Shmuel to Moshe and Aaron together. So we're talking about a great personality, a great guy. Now, okay. Having said that, we can understand now what's the lesson in our prayers in Rosh HaShanah. It's not enough, says the Rebbe, it's not enough that the innermost part of a person is as it has to be. The truth is, I'm going to be honest, I don't need to do it, but I'll do it anyway. The Rebbe is talking about Jews, okay? The Rebbe says clearly, es ist nicht genug, was die Primus von der Eden ist dabei. It's not enough that the innermost part of a Jew is as it has to be. I'm applying this to non-Jews also. Why? Why did I take this liberty? Because Rosh HaShanah is a day for non-Jews also. I explained this before. And it's in the Mishnah, it's in the Talmud, and so on. Nobody can argue that. So we can perfectly say, even though there's no obligation of praying, and we can argue this, and it's not the moment now, whether for Jews is an obligation of praying. It's not so easy. So for non-Jews, also not necessarily there's an obligation. Okay, so we can argue this. That's a different class, a different moment. But the point is that certainly, since this is the day of judgment, it applies. This idea applies for non-Jews also, certainly. Now, again, it's not enough that the innermost part of a person is as it has to be, but there's more to it. The innermost part of a person has to come out in a revealed way. You have to express your essence. It's not enough that you have, so to speak, good feelings. Express it. Bring it out. They have to be seen, so to speak. Therefore, when a person is praying in Rosh HaShanah, asking to God all your physical needs, or even your spiritual needs, I want to know more Torah, I want to understand better, I want to feel better, and so on, to God, towards God. So appears suddenly, when you're asking in the holiest moment of the year, and you're feeling holy and so on, and you're asking, I need money because I really have to pay the bills, suddenly appears, quote unquote, Eli, within yourself, your evil inclination within yourself, and says, hey, you're drunk on yourself. Look, such a holy moment, such a holy place. And what are you thinking about? Money. That's not Jewish, Judaism. You got it wrong. How can you think, in the words of the Rebbe, how can you think about things of this world and your own needs when you're crowning the king? In the moment of the crowning of the king. That's not the proper way. You see, your avoida, your work is worthless, and you are worthless, and so on, and blah, blah, blah. And the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, I suppose each person knows its own evil inclination, how it catches you, so to speak, where it hurts more. For every person is different. So it could happen. Again, we're trying to understand the lesson. If you're praying and this happens, you have to continue asking these things. On the contrary, you have to arouse within yourself the answer that Hanna gave, that every single person, even those who in the meantime are still thinking about their needs and their physical needs or the spiritual needs and so on, you're pouring your soul to God. The innermost desire of a person is, I want to be connected to God. The Alter Rebbe used to say, this is not in the talk of the Rebbe, but I think it's interesting to understand. The Alter Rebbe used to say that if we were told, like if it would be a mitzvah, a commandment from God, to chop wood, we would do it with happiness, with joy. What does that mean? Sometimes happens, and the truth is, for many Bnei Noach, non-Jews, this is the opening door, so to speak, where they come into this crazy world of Judaism. Some mitzvahs look nice, interesting. You know, family gathers and they eat together and they pray and the this and the blessings and wow, That's a nice thing. I want this for me also. Because it looks nice. It feels nice. But the truth is, we don't do this because it looks nice or because it feels nice. We just do this because this is what God wants. And now, again, the Alter Rebbe used to say, the founder of Chabad used to say, if we were told to chop wood, which doesn't look nice and is tiring and so on, we would do it with joy. It doesn't really matter. You just have to do what you have to do. It doesn't really matter whether you like it, whether other people like it or not. Who cares? This is what God wants. So be happy. You have the opportunity of fulfilling God's will. Not everybody can do that. But you can, because you know it. You know what God wills is. So you can do it. So again, if your Yetzer Hara, your bad inclination, evil inclination comes up in the middle of the prayers of Rosh HaShanah and tells you how come you're asking for physical things, you're a egoistic thing and so on, you have to answer what Hanna answered. I'm pouring my soul to God. I'm expressing my innermost true self to God. And I want these things, and I need these things just to fulfill His will. Not for me. It's not for me. I'm not asking for me. And just as the answer of Hanna answered Eli, the question, so to speak, of Eli, to the point that Eli himself gave Hanna a blessing. It should be fulfilled. If you look at the text, Eli himself said, in that case, you're not really drunk, so God should give you whatever you're asking for. He didn't know what it was. Whatever you're asking for, God should give it to you. So in the same way, basically the Rebbe ends the talk, in the same way, God should fulfill the wills of the hearts of every single person for a Shana Toivo Mesuka, for a good year and a sweet year, literally, like don't come to me with spiritual goodness, but in this world looks like terrible things. No. Really, in a revealed way. And the Rebbe used to say this many times, so that's why I'm going to read it just as it is. In good sense that can be seen and revealed, like really what we define as good. Not what God defines as good, but for us it's not. What really, really good in children, in children and health and sustenance, and all of them in a very ample and big way.